Hello. Today I will be featuring the Tier 8 IGN DD, the Akizuki. Now, this ship is of course the end of the line of the so-called the gunboat IGN line. And this ship has always been a bit special or a bit weird considering it's a Japanese gunboat, which already makes it stand out. The matchmaking isn't exactly kind to me in this game, considering not only does the enemy have a Shokaku, a carrier that helps spot, they also have a Minotaur, which is a huge threat to you, they have Baltimore for radar, they have a 3-man DD division, which are all tier 8 or tier 9, and they even have a Luoyang as a 4th DD. So, pretty horrid matchmaking. Not only am I being up-tiered, but also carrier, radar, Minotaur, all these kinds of threats. But I'm perfectly okay with this because, of course, if a ship performs well in challenging circumstances, then it's of course going to perform even better in favorable circumstances. Now, the big change, of course, since my last Akizuki commentary is the fact that stealth firing has been entirely removed. Now, in the past, this was of course one of the great strengths of the Akizuki. It was one of the best stealth fires in the game. You could shoot from 8.9 km and be undetected, which meant that running IFHE and having this huge stealth firing range made it incredibly strong at just burning things down from range. But these days, running IFHE is actually a pretty huge downside on the ship because the change in mechanic means that when your detection range becomes your firing range. So if you have the huge 15 km firing range that you could reach with IFHE, if you fire, your detection range also becomes 15 km, which is almost twice what it was in the past. So that's a huge nerf. So I experimented with the old build, and ultimately I felt like the ship could no longer effectively fire from range the way it did in the past because, well, the Akizuki is one of the clumsiest DDs. It has a 700 meter turning circle, it's as slow as a cruiser, it's fairly big, it doesn't handle evading shells like a Russian DD can. So the whole idea of sitting at range and just ducking, it didn't feel good. It didn't have good results, and you were too easy to hit, and you were constantly spotted by everything. It just didn't work the way it did in the past. So I made the decision of completely speccing out of IFHE for this reason. The big downside here is, of course, you lose some of that amazing AA range. The Akizuki has pretty good AA. If you fully spec into it with manual AA, it has great AA, but it has pretty good anti-air, and removing IFHE, of course, reduces that anti-air range from 7.2 to 6, which is, of course, a bit of a downside. So the first thing I did was spec out of this. The second goal I did was, of course, the fact that this has a lot of HP pool, meaning you can reach with survivability expert, you can reach 23k HP, and the fact that it has quite powerful guns, rail guns in fact, huge shell velocity, fast reload and so forth, made me decide to change it into what you're seeing right now, a DD hunter. That's in fact the complete change in playstyle that I've made for this ship. The sole purpose here is just hunting other DDs and killing them. I end up eating some unfortunate penetrations from behind. Both the Baltimore and Bismarck opened up on me, so I lost more HP than I wanted. I did kill the Luoyang, which was my goal, but I ate a bit more damage than I would have wanted to. I didn't want to smoke up too early because I think I was the only one really spotting that dude, and if I had smoked up, I would have blocked the vision from the guys behind me. Now, I did spot the Baltimore down here, so I'm instantly leaving my smoke and just bailing, because if I was that Baltimore, I would push up and radar me, so I'm expecting him to do that, and we can see him pushing up right now. So always try to put yourself into the pants of your enemy and what would they do, and as you can see, he popped his radar and he was pushing up, but since I already reacted in time and bailed, I have no issues here. Now, back to the build, of course. We have preventive maintenance and priority target. Lets me know how many people are targeting me, because once again, this ship is very clumsy, so knowing when people are targeting you is incredibly important. Last stand, pretty much a must-have for any DD, especially one that is planning on actively engaging other DDs. And survivability expert, we want that tankiness. In the past, I didn't use survivability expert, I used demolition expert, but considering our main target is enemy DDs, the fire chance is not nearly as important as the pure HP pool. This Kagero, he shouldn't be challenging an Akizuki like this, he is melting. Sadly, I didn't get the kill, but whatever, melted him anyway. And so we have survivability expert, and then we have of course concealment expert, because you want to be able to challenge DDs on equal terms, meaning you spot them as they spot you. You can reach 5.9k in concealment, which is very competitive with other DDs, so that's obviously very valuable to get. And of course, if you watch my IFHE guide, you should be able to quite easily calculate what the penetration on this HE is. We take the 100mm guns that this ship has, we divide it by 6, and we get 16.66666 and so forth, which of course gets rounded to 17mm of HE pen. Now, considering most DDs at this tier actually have around 90mm armor plating, for example, I think the Benson is entirely 90mm armor plating, and higher tier DDs are especially also in 90mm, we realize this is of course not enough. So after concealment expert, the next logical step is getting IFHE and bumping our HE penetration way past 20mm. I think it ends up being 21 or 22 or so. Someone can do the math if they want. But importantly, it pushes us past the 19mm threshold, which of course means that we are able to actively wreck enemy DDs, since we are able to actively penetrate them with HE from pretty much any angle. And finally, of course, you have obviously seen the big arrow on my screen pointing exactly where I launched those torps, as I'm expecting the DD to push through, which he does in fact do. And that's of course RPF. RPF is a massively useful DD hunting tool. I run it on my gearing, of course, because on the gearing I also like hunting enemy DDs and killing them, and for the same reason I run it on the Akizuki. The Kiev pushes through, he was his own smoke, so I pop my smoke since I know I now have a smoke advantage, and you can see just how quickly this guy is melting to my guns. 3-second reload, once again, sadly I don't get the kill, god damn it, but the 3-second reload and these guns that consistently penetrate his armor, or the HE that consistently penetrates thanks to IFHE, means that this ship is of course incredibly strong at fighting other DDs, as the Kiev showed quite nicely there by melting underneath me. So, and finally of course, that's an 18-point captain once we have gotten RPF. The last point is of course in priority target, to know how many people are shooting at you. Once again, big clumsy ship. You want to know if people are targeting you from far away, because then you usually want to take a break and stop shooting, because once again this ship is not very good at evading. It's way too clumsy to play it any other way. So this new type of playstyle has, or this slightly changed type of playstyle has been how I've been speccing my Akizuki now, and I've actually really been enjoying it, because, well, the Akizuki is strong enough with this build to really take on any DD. Of course there are exceptions, for example Z52 smoking up and popping Hydra will shit on you, but that's not really an equal gunfight considering he has the spotting advantage. But if you both are able to spot each other and it's a pretty much straight up fight, you can take on almost anything. I would put exception on something like a Kaba. You can do decent damage to a Khabarovsk just by switching to AP. Because of course Kaba has 50mm broadside armor, which your HE will not penetrate, but on the other hand you will get a lot of nice penetration damage on him if you switch to AP, which is surprisingly strong. But ultimately of course Kaba has so much raw HE alpha, he will probably still wreck you. So that's of course one fight that you shouldn't be taking. But when it comes to Russian DDs, of course you have a massive spotting advantage, and you shouldn't be fighting them in the first place. I saw where the Minotaur smoked up and stopped, so I used the torpedo reload consumable to make a large enough widespread that it would be very hard for him to evade all the torps, and he ended up eating 3 torps and dying. So at this point in the game, we're only about 9 minutes into the game, but I've kept C, I've focused down the Loyang, I helped kill both their Kagero and their Kiev, sadly I didn't get either of those kills, and I've wrecked the Minotaur. So you can already see that a pretty damn big impact on this game. These are the Minotaur torps, and you see I'm actually taking my time here, and I'm focused. You might not see it, but I am of course control clicking these planes to get my 30% increased damage. Now the anti-air on the ship isn't really that special unless you specifically spec for it. In competitive games you see Akizuki shoot down a lot of planes, but that's because in competitive games people spec the ship differently. In there it's all about AFT and adding on manual AA on top, and it's of course manual AA that really helps it, since a lot of the damage on these guns is on the long range guns. And manual AA of course doubles the DPM of the long range guns, and that's why they shoot down so many planes. So and of course they fully spec it for anti-air, and if you're not running that kind of stuff like I am here, then you won't be shooting down nearly as much, and the AA really isn't that special without specifically specking for it. Now I smoke up here, since not only is the Bismarck pushing out and I want to kill him, but there's also Friedrich Grosse down in the B cap, and I want to start shooting him next. And there's also a chance that the IFHE in our spawn might try to hunt our Lexington, in which case he will enter my firing range, and I'll start working on him as well. As a fire starter, this ship is of course not very good now. The fire chance I think is around 3%, considering we're running IFHE. And I think, I'm not sure if I'm running flags, I think with flags it's about 3%. Regardless, that is of course an awful fire chance. There's no real kind way of putting that. You are not very good starting fires at all. You still have of course a really fast rate of fire and a lot of guns, so you will end up starting a couple of fires as you saw on this Friedrich Grosse, but it doesn't really play the same way. You can still harass and kill battleships, but you are not nearly as good at the role as you used to be. The priority has shifted with the change in mechanics. My priority on this ship has switched from hunting enemy battleships to hunting enemy DDs, which ultimately tends to give you a larger advantage as well. Now, regardless of all the work I've been putting in here and all the effort, my team is still quite heavily losing, which is of course a bit frustrating. In fact, they were approaching 900 points, killing that Grosse put it back down to 830, but we're still quite heavily down on points. Ultimately, of course, I would love to go and cap B, but they have not only have they had a lot of battleships and backup and planes flying all around here, making it very awkward to push in. There's also the Fletcher still around, but at this point I'm going to be forced to take him on, focus firing the planes of course, see if I could maybe shoot down one or two on the way, but once again, without fully specking for AA, the AA isn't that special, and you shouldn't be expecting to shoot down too many planes. You see my RPF is pointing. It could be the Grosse Kurfürst, or it could be someone closer. I'm going close to this island to let RPF give me a heads up, turning my turrets preemptively. Oh, you saw that RPF switch? That tells me the Fletcher is in the cap, as I suspected. So RPF of course gives me a lot of useful information. The hope is of course to be able to ambush this Fletcher, but I'm almost certain that he knows I'm coming because of these planes, but I have no choice because they have over 900 points now and I need to make something happen. So I attack the Fletcher. I try to turn and turn away. Of course, kiting away is always better. I try to get into this, but once again the ship is very slow and it takes a long time. My DPM still melts this ship. You can see pure penetrations, 36 of them. I do kill him off, but sadly he trades me in return, and well, I get my Kraken and a flesh wound, but even with all this effort, it's simply not enough. My two battleships, as you can see, are very far away on the flank. They are on the 9 line, and my Tashkent is sailing around in the enemy spawn, and my Yamato still has 61k HP, and is only now like starting to push in, which is of course too late. So ultimately there wasn't really much else I could do, and the points tick over and the game ends in the enemy's favor, sadly. Still though, considering it was tier 10 matchmaking, getting almost 700k credits for a loss is always nice. Only 113k damage, but once again, we weren't really hunting damage, we were hunting enemy DEDs. Getting the Kraken is always nice. Only 4 planes shot down. As I said, this build doesn't have much anti-air power at all, and you shouldn't be expecting it. Looking at the team score is of course a bit depressing, considering my team actually lost, but I still have over 2000 basic speed, and I have in fact more basic speed than their number one player. Their number one player is the Fletcher with 1.6k, and I have 400 more base XP and my team still lost the game, which is, well, a bit annoying, but still this game did show serve to show the purpose of how this new build works and how effective it can be. In fact, looking at detailed report, we can see, well, the Minotaur, of course, we can see some split damage on the battleships, but mostly it's about Fletcher damage, Loyang damage, Kiev damage, and what was the last DD they have? The Kagero? Yeah, the Kagero also melted him. So a lot of actual raw damage dealt to the DDs, which is of course the goal here. And ultimately I've really been enjoying this build. I think it's very strong. I think it just works. This is the new way to make this ship feel very strong. I feel the stealth firing days are gone for this ship. It doesn't have the maneuverability or the speed to be able to actively play it like a Khabarovsk or maybe even a Grozovoi. It just doesn't work like that. It's too clumsy and too big. But as a DD hunter, this ship is straight up excellent. Anyway, let's move on to my recommended build. Alright, starting off, we of course have the modules. Considering we're building this ship as a gunboat, the first thing we want is of course more HP, so we take the hull upgrade, followed by the gun upgrade to get that additional range, and lastly the torp upgrade, which is okay, but it's really not that big of a deal. But you want it anyway, of course. Consumable wise, premium repair and premium smoke, especially premium smoke, are your two priorities. And then if you got the extra money to spend, you can go for premium torpedo booster and premium engine boost. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod, you want tankier turrets and torp tubes. AA gun range, even if we're not running AFT, we still want to increase the gun range because it's so useful, or, well, it's still strong. I mean, you'll still be shooting down planes, and it's always useful to be able to shoot them down. Propulsion mod, because losing engine is the worst thing that can happen to this already incredibly slow and clumsy DD. Rudder shift, once again, clumsy DD, and stealth, since we are hunting enemy DDs. Captain perks wise, priority number 1 is of course preventive maintenance. Once again, we don't want to be losing torp tubes or guns. Last stand, must have for any DD, especially one that's going to be actively hunting other DDs. Health, survivability expert, once again, we are building this ship especially for this purpose. Concealment expert, because once again, we want to be able to get close and not get outspotted by the enemy. IFHE for that HE direct damage against enemy DDs. This is particularly important here. And of course radio location, because, well, once again, hunting down DDs. This build is purposely built for this one purpose. And finally, of course, priority target, since we are slow, clumsy and so forth, knowing when people are actually targeting you is quite important. Anyway, that was my Akizuki commentary and the build I have now chosen to use for this ship. I found it very, very strong. As a DD hunter, the ability to just deal so much direct damage on such a quick reload, and thanks to the shell velocity, it's so easy to land these shells. You're not a good fire starter, only 3% fire chance, but the amount of damage you can deal to enemy DDs, and thanks to the tankiness of the ship itself, it's very strong at what it does. And considering the changes in Stealthfire, I don't feel like the ship is as good of a stealth firing ship anymore. Well, no ship is really good of a stealth firing ship anymore, but it doesn't serve its old purpose as well as it used to in the past. And I think this new approach of just going as a pure DD hunter gives it a very, very strong role, considering how important DDs are for winning games. Anyway, that was all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it.